some cautions. As with any subjective form of technical analysis, there are, at times, variable definitions that will be defined according to the user's experience and background. This is true of some candle patterns. Depending on my source of information, there were instances in which I came across different, albeit usually minor, definitions of what constitutes a certain pattern. For example, one Japanese author writes that the open has to be above the prior close in order to complete a dark cloud cover pattern. Other written and oral sources say that for this pattern, the open should be above the prior high. In cases where there were different definitions, I chose the rules that increased the probability that the pattern's forecast would be correct. For example, the pattern referred to in the prior paragraph is a reversal signal that appears at tops. Thus, I chose the definition that the market should open above the prior day's high. This is because it is potentially more bearish if the market opens above the prior day's high and then fails, versus if the market opens above the prior day's close and then failed. Much of the Japanese material I had translated is less than specific. Part of this might be the result of the Japanese penchant for being vague. The penchant may have its origins in the feudal ages, when it was acceptable for a samurai to behead any commoner who did not treat him as expected. The commoner did not always know how a samurai expected him to act or to answer. By being vague, many heads were spared. However, I think the more important reason for the somewhat ambiguous explanations has to do with the fact that technical analysis is more of an art than a science. One should not expect rigid rules. Most forms of technical analysis are guideposts. For instance, if one of the Japanese books says that a candle line has to be surpassed to forecast the next bull move, I equate surpassed with on a close above. That is because to me a close is more important than an intraday move, because intraday move above resistance or below support. This is another example of subjectivity. In the Japanese literature, many candle patterns are described as important at a high price area or at a low price area. Obviously, what constitutes a high price or low price area is open to interpretation. One of the techniques I suggest using to gauge low or high price is an oscillator to see if the market is oversold or overbought. This is an example of why it is viable to add classic Western technical tools such as oscillators to those of candle charts. As with all charting methods, candle chart patterns are subject to the interpretation of the user. Extended experience with candle charting in your market will show you which of the patterns and variations of these patterns works best in your markets. In this sense, subjectivity may not be a liability. This may give you an advantage over those who have not devoted the time and energy in tracking your markets as closely as you have.